have negotiated out 15 days out of contract to get us down to a July 31st completion. And that was done through this line treatment that we're talking about. But by being able to give them the ability to work on the site through the rainy season, that is going to help us with that acceleration.
At least at the current time, then, you're not necessarily envisioning some additional monies being thrown at this to get it done sooner?
Well, the monies we threw out were actually through the line treating. And so the cost of the line treating to accelerate that project, I believe the change order is in about the $79,000 range.
So we're currently sitting in roughly 3% change order as of January 23rd, the date of this report, correct?
Correct.
So that 70-some thousand sounds pretty minimal. So
It is very minimal. Our last change order that was actually a large change order on this job was for the floor treatment, and it was for the floor ceiling moisture content in the floors were too high to receive the flooring materials being put down. And that change order that went through had a large impact on this, and it was in the $455,000 range. It's a necessity that we needed to be able to move forward. And one of the things we've negotiated in that particular change order was actually the ability to actually back out some of the costs if we didn't need to do it on the first floor of these buildings. And there's potential as we move forward in the project, as the buildings begin to be heated and we're warming, the concrete could dry out a little bit more and our moisture levels would come up and be acceptable, and then therefore we'd be looking for a credit back. So we wanted to make sure we were looking at the worst case scenario. And this here is Deanza, and again, the earthwork continues out there as we try to get out of the ground on the new link learning building 10, yes, thank you, as well as moving forward on the fields. El Cerrito, you can see it looks like, I guess I would call them almost cornrows, but they're actually, the equipment in the background, the white equipment, that's actually lime treatment. So they're actually lime treating this field up here for the same reasons, in order to move forward during the winter months, in order to get a movement on the actual field work itself. Buildings are going up, and everything's on schedule so far. And this is a late 2015 open. Yes?
Did you lose some time on the project with all the rain in December?
We didn't lose time actually on the buildings, but we lost time on the site. So we weren't able to work on getting the soils ready to start the field itself. And this is the Kennedy High School pool. Just giving you a shot back at the new roof that's actually going on for the natatorium portion of that. You gotta think about that one. And this project is on schedule as well.
Aquatic.
And so this is Pinole Valley High School, and this is one of the last pieces that we did. In the background, you'll see the food kiosks. We actually put the canopies over the top. There was complaints from the students that were getting wet in the rain. We also installed a canopy over the top of the food serving line on the food service portable.
Louis, this one, if you go back to Pinole Valley High Interim Housing, this one has, if you look down the list, the 20% change order. Would you just comment briefly on what that's all about and why? We know that based on a famous facilities meeting a couple of times ago, and then it was brought to the board, Pinole zoomed from 84 million total up to 130 some, as I recall. I don't know the numbers, but this specific project, which itself is only a $5.5 million project, but yet it's got a 20% change order. Just comment on that if you will.
I think most of that, we've covered it in a lot of different ways, but it has to do with acceleration of the site, late arrival portables. It also had to do with some of the dirt on site. There were sub bays that had to be added to that site, and a lot of off-haul soils. So there was movement of utilities based upon the portables that actually shipped. Utilities were actually in the wrong side of the building from where we planned, so there's work involved in moving those over, as well as it changes to the wireless. The building was hardwired, and then there's addition for wireless wiring.
So as we move along in the coming months with Pinole, and more Pinole High School sub-projects come on this list, will we likely be seeing some pretty high change order percentages? Because the night that the guy from WLC, and I forget his name, the partner fellow who spoke rather eloquently, I thought, at the facilities meeting, was pretty convincing about soil issues this and the hillside that, and we had to put more steel in because of, and blah, 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 blah. All very convincing, but it just made me think, and especially if the total school site project has gone from 80-some to 130-some, as Pinole High School projects come online, sub-projects come online, to appear on the sheet as active construction, will there in fact be generally high change order percentages we'll be looking at?
We would like to think that we're gonna stay in the industry norm, and we're making a concerted effort to go through the plans and constructability review comments right now to make sure they get incorporated into the drawings for the new high school. So when we put the building out to bid, we have a high level of confidence that the product we're bidding is gonna get us where we need to be. So we'd like to think, no, we're not gonna see that high rate. And do I have a crystal ball? No.
Sure.
We're doing everything we can to minimize that.
This one is a pretty small total contract of only $5 million, and, yeah, it's certainly not in industry norms at 20%, correct? I mean,
That's
not an
correct.
industry norm. So, going forward with as these all high school sub-projects come online, we don't expect the dramatic kinds of change orders necessarily. Realize your limited crystal ball, but it sounds like that's something you guys are trying to address.
We're very much so trying to address that.
Yes, we are, so the next sub-project is basically the school, and the construction of the school, and so we have been putting in a lot of time into constructability reviews of those plans.
I'm
A
curious about
significant amount of time.
you mentioned about the trailers, what was the issue there?
Well, some of the trailers that were actually, that we designed the interim housing around, where utilities may come in, so whether it be a power feed to the back or a plumbing connection, and these are, sometimes if you don't have the actual manufacturer drawings at the time that we submit to DSA, or they do the plans, say for the temporary site, then they use the best guess they can on plans that are available. And, they try to get the commitment from the manufacturer, these are the buildings we're actually gonna get.
Sure.
But when we get in line and the buildings actually ship, depending on what they have in their inventory, those utilities can change by manufacturer. So depending on what mobile manufacturer at the time that we get, it could be on the right and we think it's on the left. Door swing, we may have to accommodate because we can't get all the rights and lefts we need, we may get some rights. And so ramps change, so there's a lot of variables that affect us when we're dealing with somebody else's product.
Are there best practices going forward to preclude, the doors and power and all of that from being an issue?
I think most of it is just planning to make sure we have enough time ahead of us in order to get ahead of it, plan it correctly.
Sure.
And I think this was a project that was stalled and then it was pushed and the timeline was just compressed and everybody scrambled to get the job going.
Okay, so we're not likely to see a repetition in
No,
the future?
in this particular
You've caught
project.
it and you've addressed it?
Right.
Okay.
And the number of buildings that went in here, you had 100 buildings that went in. So that's a large number of buildings and, most of our projects would not accommodate that, we'd be in the 20, 30 buildings.
Sure.
So it's just the magnitude, it's
Lot of buildings.
a complicated thing.
Have all of
Yes.
our, say, combined projects, has the change order factor been about 5%?
But, I'm sorry?
Considering all our projects together, has our change order factor been about 5%?
I'd have to look at the historical information in order to give you a good answer to that.
What a wonderful question, though, because that's something that in this calendar year, our change order committee is gonna be looking at. And if you look on the bottom of this new alignment or new presentation page for the project status report, you can see that for the 20 projects, the 20 line items of projects, that there's a change order percentage of 3.19% for the roughly $25 million of these 20 projects. So these are only the 20 active construction projects out of the roughly 800 sub-projects that are a part of our 54 school sites. And for this $250 million contract value, you can see that there's an overall 3.19%. However, 8 of those line items above have 5% or greater. So this sheet will increasingly become, if we pay attention to, the line items and the columns columns and everything else we got, it's kind of a neat indicator of, at least for the actual in-construction projects that are being tracked. And I'll have another comment to say about this in the KPI report. I know we're getting short on time, but anyway, to answer your question, I hope you see that line item there with the 3.19%.
And just add to Tom's comment, if you also look at the percent complete, you can kind of get a rough feel for where these projects are in construction. So if you're looking at the change order percent and where they are, it just kind of gives you a gauge. You know, a lot of the change order you see getting out of the ground and the initial phase of construction, you hope to eliminate some of it towards the end of it. It doesn't say there may or may not be claims there, but it's a good indicator.
But industry standard is
Is 5–10%.
5–10%? Okay.
And here is our